Like if you ask me, Vidya, what is the single most, important thing a PM can ever do for a team? I would say it's creating clarity.
Wow.
Everything else comes after that. Right? Clarity in terms of what is the problem, clarity in terms of why are we the team to solve this, clarity in terms of why do we solve it now, clarity in terms of discussing trade-offs and helping take decisions, clarity in terms of escalating something versus not escalating something. Like at the end of the day, everything you can tie everything back to, are you able to create clarity?
Yeah.
So one trait that I definitely look for is how well do you create clarity?
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Product Unfiltered. Joining us today, we have Vidya Srinivasan, Principal Product Manager at Meta. With over 10 years of experience across consumer, small business, and enterprise segments, Vidya has led the development of several successful products, including community chats and Instagram broadcast channels at Meta. She was also responsible for driving growth and adoption of Microsoft Teams for SMBs, the fastest growing business app in Microsoft's history. Vidya was also the founding member and PM lead for SharePoint Spaces, the first enterprise VR service for Microsoft. Vidya is not only an accomplished product manager, but also a public speaker, singer, and D&I advocate, with her work being featured on several international media outlets, including Forbes and the Wall Street Journal. Her insights into product management, public speaking, and thriving as a woman in tech are widely recognized, making her a thought leader in the industry. Thank you so much, Vidya, for taking out your valuable time for our podcast. We are really glad to have you here.
Thank you for having me. That was a phenomenal summary, much better than what ChatGPT could write, I think.
No, you had, yeah, Vidya. No, you had such an interesting and varied career so far. So just to kick off things, we would love to know what inspired you to pursue a career in product management.
If I'm being totally honest, I think it's curiosity and destiny. Because I started my career as a product manager. I've never worked before that. I always thought when I was pursuing my master's here in the US, I always thought people who did their computer science, a master's degree in computer science would end up becoming a software engineer. And when I graduated 10 years ago, it was S3 and QA were the hot roles. Right. So I naturally thought, I was I was interested in networking for a hot second. I thought, okay, I'm going to become a software engineer working in some networking company, but then I came across this role of product/program manager. Back then it was pretty, there was not a hard definition.
Yeah.
Some companies had it as product managers, some companies had it as program managers, but the roles were pretty flexible, I would say. And I thought, okay, I'd interview for an internship and let's see where this goes. And I got an internship offer for, a product manager role at Microsoft. And I thought, okay, I'll do it for 3 months. What's the worst that could happen? I would suck in the job, or they would think I'm incapable of being a PM, and I'd go back to my search of being a software engineer. So I thought, okay, there's the cons of doing this internship is very less. Plus, it's Microsoft, let's be honest.
Yeah.
So, I did the internship and I absolutely loved it. And I was like, damn, this is, like some moments where you feel like, damn, this is what I was meant to do of sorts.
Yeah.
I had that, inkling that I might be good at this thing. And surprisingly, Microsoft gave me an offer by the time I completed my internship. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go and, do this. And 10 something years later, I'm still a PM. So TLDR of your question is curiosity plus destiny.
Well, that's great to know, Vidya. Also, there are a lot of discussion these days around whether you want to be a B2B product manager or B2C product manager. Since you have been a product manager at both the segments, that is in that enterprise and the consumer side, can you talk a bit more about how's your approach in product development while targeting different segments?
For sure. Honestly, development for B2B or enterprise or SMB, if you want to get more granular versus B2C, there are more things in common than, than differences, I would say. Because I also, I spent a lot of time working on enterprise and SMB segments before I made the switch to consumer. And part of me always thought, well, you know what, maybe that side of the land is going to be so different. Now that I've done that as well, there's honestly more similarities, because the crux of building a good product or good product strategy is still the same. How well do you understand your users? How well do you understand the problems they're facing? How well can you quantify the problem they're facing? Right? How well do you work with your XFN? Like beyond a certain level, product management becomes more of an, art.
Yeah.
Right? Than just the core technical skills or domain knowledge that you have to build. A lot of that are similar. But since you asked, a few things that come to mind on what the differences are. One is your audience. Right? In consumer segment, the diversity of your audience might be much, much more than in an enterprise segment, right? But the flip side of that is in enterprise segment, you technically would have two consumers at any given point in time. And what I mean by that is the actual user who is using the product and the IT team that is gatekeeping your product from getting to the hands of the users. And you have to satisfy both of them.
Yeah.
And that it's very important that you understand that it's not just you build something amazing and then, expect everyone to pay millions of dollars, and to use your product, right? You also have to satisfy all the requirements by the IT team or the office of the CTO or whomever it is that is gatekeeping, making the decision to invest in your service, right? So that's one. Secondly, experimentation. A lot of enterprise, especially the big enterprise companies, are very allergic to experimentation. Okay. So when I was working on some of the, core content management systems and, core enterprise products at Microsoft, we actually had a very tough time experimenting, running through A/B tests. Why? Because if you're, let's say, the, admin of, let's take Coca-Cola, for example, that's a big, conglomerate. They don't want Rahul to get a different experience than Utkarsh when Rahul and Utkarsh are working together.
Yeah.
That's
right. And a lot of times, the enterprise companies, the IT departments or the gatekeepers will also have to factor into things like training their staff, building their internal workflows, right? So you have to be very mindful of how you can test your products, experiment your products in alternate ways, not just doing a A/B of sorts. In a consumer segment, it's much more flexible to run an A/B test. You can run hundreds of tests at once, right? There's a little bit more flexibility, I would say. And the other one is release cadence. This was also interesting for me because, typically in the consumer segment, you keep hearing people say like, you're all about like, agility. We want to ship fast. We want to move fast. We want to learn fast. We want to grow fast, right? In the enterprise segments, you would be surprised to find that a lot of customers do not want you to launch fast.
Yeah.
They are very mindful of the cadence in which they receive updates to products. I've worked in products where our biggest customers told us, you guys are shipping too fast.
Okay.
Slow down. We will not upgrade. We will not adopt, right? You have to slow down because you have to give them enough time to absorb what the product is, use the product and figure out if it's going to break any of their customizations, right? Or if they have to build on top of the workflows or if they have to train somebody else, right? I think you have to be mindful. Like you would never imagine. I was wondering, why don't you want things faster? But then, once you get to the, nitty-gritties of why they are resistant to change at a faster pace, you try to start empathizing with them saying, that makes a lot more sense now.
Yeah.
So these are some, bigger differences, I would say. But the art and craft of building products, Rahul, is still very much the same, irrespective of who you're building for.
But Vidya, it's been a decade since you have been in the product industry. How have you seen the evolvement of this product space? Like what all things have changed in the past 10 years?
For one, I think it's become very popular now. Everybody wants to be a product manager. I've never seen, I think in the last 2-ish years is when I started noticing this, rush towards the product space. I think we're getting a lot more recognition, which is good. And I think this is also because companies start to realize the necessity for this role called a PM.
Yeah.
Right? Like I've been asked so many times when I said, hey, I'm a product manager, they were like, so what do you do again? Right? Like the number of times where I have to explain when I got started, like there was, you kind of go through this existential crisis of like, what exactly am I doing here? Am I really adding value? Why isn't anybody else able to understand? Like when I used to go and like speak at conferences, like when I introduced myself as I'm so-and-so, and like a lot of, I'm a PM working on so-and-so, and they were like, so what exactly do you do? Right? I mean, I still get, so what exactly do you do? But it's a lot less frequent, right? And I think I can talk in a language that, many more people understand now, thanks to the popularity of the product space itself.
Yeah.
And secondly, I also think there's a little bit more clarity on the flavors of product roles.
Mhm.
Right? Like, I mean, I think there's still a cohort of users who use program, project, product terms interchangeably,
Yeah.
but that's not true at all. There's a lot of, I mean, these roles share things in common, but they have so many differences.
Yeah.
Right? But back in the day, there was a trend that people literally used to use program management, project management, product management so interchangeably. Right? Like people we say, I'm a PM, I do agile and scrum management. I'm like, I lost you right there, right? But I think those things have this lot more clarity to the different flavors of product roles, right? And companies are starting to realize the value of having a good PM, right?
Yeah.
And a lot more PMs are, getting to directorial and VP roles. Right. Again, there was also a trend where most VPs that I worked with during my early, career days were all from the engineering background. They were all software engineers turned engineering managers turned directors turned VP. Like I had very few role models who were product leaders who turned into VPs. Right now, I think I can name at least 10 different product leaders who eventually became VPs and were, and are leading big product. So I think it's a good trend, right? But I also think the con of that is there's a lot of it's become very salesy.
Yeah.
Like there's a course by every other person on how to become a PM, right?
Yeah.
And unless what I would say is if you're evaluating on taking such a course, like take it from a person who has been a PM for 8 to 10 years, because only then you will perfect the art. I mean, you won't perfect it, but you will have enough to share and train someone else. Right? Like just really do a deep dive of, wherever you're paying your money or time or, whatever it is that you're investing, like make sure you do your due diligence of, because there's an explosion in the role, but the number of PM roles will always be less than the number of engineering roles.
Yeah.
Always. That's how the ratio works. Just be mindful of, not getting scammed, I guess.
Yeah. And this is very interesting, Vidya. As you mentioned, from the past few years, we have seen a surge in product manager roles. And these days, we see many MS degrees focus on product management. So what is your take on it? Do you think product management is something which you can learn from a formalized education like doing your master's, or is it a skill which you inherit while working on a real-time basis?
I've never taken a PM course or certificate or anything. So I can't tell you from personal experience on if I would have taken this course, would I have been a better product manager, right? But what I can tell you is you will pick up a lot more than doing than you will ever pick up by reading or listening.
Absolutely.
Or seeing. Right? Like, if you were to ask me, Vidya, like do I spend $300 on this course or do I spend it on building this product? I would say just go do the later. Like take any product, tear it down, or go and build your first, or take a product that you'll use and find bugs that you don't like and come up with a proposal to fix them. Just going through the thought process of understanding how to identify problems and come up with realistic solutions that might actually solve the problem will give you a lot more bang for the buck than you sitting in front of a lecture for 2 hours and trying to take notes.
Absolutely.
Right? So I would always, I have learned a ton just by doing. I mean, you still pick up, skills and tips and techniques, right? Have I picked up how to run better meetings by, listening to a podcast? Sure. Right. But have I, learned how to drastically improve my strategy by taking a course? Probably not.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, for product management, we see there are different verticals which a product manager has to conquer. Stakeholder management, general management, all these are on the business side. But we also have a technical side of product management. Now, you being someone who has a CS background, what advantage do you feel product managers with a CS background have over a non-technical product manager? And do you think having a technical background is really a necessity to get into product management?
Is it a necessity to get into product management? Maybe not. Is it a superpower to be a great product manager? Yes.
Maybe yes. Yeah.
Right? I think it's a resounding yes, to be honest, not even a maybe.
Okay.
I'll tell you why, right? Because what are you trying to do as a PM? You're trying to build amazing products. Right? What do you need to understand to build amazing products beyond, your users and your, problems and all the usual suspects. How is it being built?
Yeah.
Right. You are trying to, and especially in certain technical space, like I work on a lot on ML systems right now, right? Like I work in safety and integrity, and a lot of systems are machine learning, systems, models that we build. In order for me to even have an intelligent conversation with my ML engineers, I need to understand, okay, how do these things work?
Yeah.
And same thing, a lot of PMs, especially if you're an infra PM or if you're a platform PM, you need to really be able to speak the same language as your engineering counterpart so that you can come up with, a better architecture, so that you can actually improve the systems, right? So I think being able to, you don't have to go get to the level of debugging the code, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to get to the level of, you're probably not going to be the first point of contact for a set. But when someone comes and tells you that, hey, to fix this cell, we have option A, which is XX, amount of weeks of days of engineering work, hours of work, and will give you YY result, or option B, which has ZZ and YY, you should actually be able to comprehend that trade-off and connect it with your users, with your problems, with the impact and everything, all the other parameters, and be able to guide that engineer.
Yeah.
Right. And in order for you to do that, you need to understand, okay, what are the limitations of the systems? Right? How do my APIs work?
Yeah.
Right? Which systems integrate? And if this system is down, and also a lot of what PMs do is connecting the dots. You have to be really fast at connecting the dots. And what will help you connect the dots many a times is you understanding the nitty-gritty of how the systems work. If this system is down, then you should be able to you should be in a position where you're able to predict that, okay, this system is down, so it's going to impact A, B, and C over here. So I'm going to give a heads up to teams C, D, and E.
Yeah.
Right. So I think in all of those scenarios, having a technical background or being able to understand the next level of details will definitely help. It'll serve you well.
Yeah. Also, Vidya, to build successful products, you need to have a high-performing team. So while you're hiring or recruiting new people to your team, what type of skills or traits do you look for in potential hires?
So there are a few different things, right? I mean, obviously, they should be passionate. And by passionate, I don't mean like I want you to be, let's say I'm hiring for like an enterprise team. I want you to be passionate to improve this workflow. No. Nobody's going to wake up and say, you know what, I'm going to go and I'm passionate about improving this workflow. No, you just have to be passionate about building products. Right? You should not look at this as a chore.
Yeah.
Right? You have to have some, spark in you where you're like, damn, I want to understand. I really want to get to the bottom of this problem. And I really want to be able to solve this problem like that. Right? And then, the second thing I would say is you should be comfortable with ambiguity. Right? I mean, a lot of the times why PM interview questions are open-ended is we want to see, are you able to take something that is super blue sky, super ambiguous, and arrive at some logical conclusion? 95% of PM questions, they don't have a right answer. The right answer is how you shape the conversation. Right? So you should be very comfortable with ambiguity. And as you scale up, in your career, and as you get to like, senior or principal levels, the amount of ambiguity and the scope of your ambiguity only keeps increasing.
Yeah.
Right. And you have to also, the other thing that I also look for is, are you really striving to create clarity? Like if you ask me, Vidya, what is the single most, important thing a PM can ever do for a team? I would say it's creating clarity.
Wow.
Everything else comes after that. Right? Clarity in terms of what is the problem? Clarity in terms of why are we the team to solve this? Clarity in terms of why do we solve it now? Clarity in terms of, discussing trade-offs and helping take decisions. Clarity in terms of escalating something versus not escalating something. Like at the end of the day, everything, you can tie everything back to, are you able to create clarity?
Yeah.
So one trait that I definitely look for is, how well do you create clarity? Right? What are some of your past experiences in creating clarity? How have you dealt with contentious situations? Do you easily get overwhelmed when I throw a whole bunch of opinionated opinions at you or opinionated discussions at you? Are you able to, get into a room full of, people with different opinions and thoughts and, data, and still are you able to create clarity?
Yeah.
Lead the team, into a direction, and are you able to rally the team? And the other thing I think, which ties really close to the clarity part is, are you a good communicator?
Yeah.
I think this is very, very undersold, right? Communication, both written and verbal. This is extremely important to actually make yourself stand out as a good PM. I started noticing this and honing these skills, at about like when you hit that mid stage, I would say. Like, the more junior levels, you still need to communicate well, but you have enough people shielding you.
Yeah.
Right? Like the risk versus reward is much lower there.
That's right.
Rightfully so, right? So, and then when you get to like the mid level, and then when you start getting to the senior levels, is when you really need to, your communication can actually make or break your strategy or your product or your team's goals, right? And finally, I would say just growth mindset. Like when I was at Microsoft, I think there was a pivot towards this fix it versus growth mindset. Like there was a lot of emphasis on what does it mean to have a growth mindset. Until then, I don't think anybody internalized. I mean, now it seems so obvious. You're like, duh, like, of course we should all have a growth mindset. But until I went through the journey at Microsoft of understanding and internalizing what does growth mindset mean? How does it look in practice? Right? So just being able to have a growth mindset. And the final thing I would say is not being egocentric.
Yeah.
Right? Because PM is, this very weird role where when people say you're the CEO, you're not the CEO of anything, right? You're not the CEO. You are a facilitator.
Yeah.
Right? You facilitate a lot of important discussions. You create clarity. Of course, you put the pen on writing the strategy, the roadmap, but you're not doing it in isolation. You should not be doing it in isolation.
Yeah.
Right? Like your product strategy is probably going to be a massive fail if you're, locking yourself behind a closed door and then like coming up with, a grand reveal. Right? So you need to, notch and you need to ensure that your ego doesn't flare up. Because a lot of times you'll be challenged. A lot of times people won't agree with your decisions. And you have to be, build a certain level of maturity in ensuring that you are able to put your individual feelings and, and things aside and then do what is right for the product, for the user, for the team.
Exactly. And Vidya, you very rightly mentioned the kind of skills which aspiring product managers really need to get into product management. And as we know now, product management has become so competitive while being so famous. What are some tips and advice you would like to share with aspiring product managers who are planning to get into the field of PMing? How can they develop all these skills which you mentioned?
Yeah, the first thing I think is get super clear about why you want to be a PM. Honestly, you back in the day, I didn't have the clarity and it wasn't needed.
Yeah.
It was not a sought after role. It was not, but now for every PM role, there's probably like 10x the number of applicants vying for the role. And the bar is pretty high right now because the role has evolved. Right? Like, so be really clear. I get this question probably 10 times every week on LinkedIn. I want to pivot to product management. How do I start? And the first question I ask every single person who comes to me is, why do you want to be a PM? Right? 7 out of 10 times it's for the wrong reason. They're like, I don't like coding. Right? I like running meetings. Right? I like talking to customers. Right? So it's I want more work-life balance.
Oh no.
So it's things like these, right? You have to be very clear on what is the role. And what about it fascinates you? What about it wants you to, wants you to give it a shot, right? So that's one. And secondly, I would say if you don't have any PM experience or any work experience, try to speak the language of product managers, right? Like listen to podcasts like this where you hear PMs speaking so that you can pick up, okay, this is the language they speak. These are the fundamental things. Like, be familiar with the PM 101 language, right? And third one I would say is try to build some product. It doesn't have to be, I don't want you to go and build a startup, right? But just pick any product. Let's say you use Strava for running. Well, do a teardown on Strava. Understand why Strava is making certain decisions.
Yeah.
Right? Understand why Strava, which was giving some features for free last year, is now putting it under a paywall.
Yeah.
Right? Like, do you find bugs in Strava? Then, come up with write a one-pager for that. What do you think Strava should do for the next 2 years? Write a one-pager for that. I mean, the intent of this exercise is not to have assets to show to your interviewer, but just to go through the thought process of what you might be doing inside the company. And if you don't enjoy the majority of what you're doing, then you probably won't like the role.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? Just going through the exercise, and it will also, help you understand how you think.
Yeah.
What were your strengths? What parts of it excited you the most? Is it using Strava, or is it reading app reviews? Right? Is it the customer research aspect of it? Is it just coming up with, moonshot ideas? Like, what about it really fascinated you? Right?
Yeah.
That's the third. The fourth, I would say, is communication. I will always say you can be an amazing idea generator. If you fail to communicate that, you will not get the role.
Yeah.
And a very, very core part of a PM role, irrespective of the level in most companies now, is you should be able to communicate it. Communicate well. You should be able to write well. You should definitely invest in and being comfortable with communicating your ideas clearly, and you can only do it by this comes with practice. It's not a course to take for half an hour and then write down a few frameworks and then go on regurgitate it. Right? You have to do it a few times so that you get comfortable. Pick up public speaking. Right? Write something and put it out there. See if you're able to create clarity with what you've written. Write something and share it with your friends at college. Ask them 3 questions. Give me a TLDR of what you just read, and see if that maps with the TLDR of what you wrote.
Yeah.
And simple things like these, will actually go a long way, because at the end of the day, your interview is a combination of how well you understand the role.
Yeah.
Right. Your enthusiasm for the role and how well you're able to answer the questions. Right. So you don't have to. It's not rocket science to crack a PM interview, to be very honest. Right. So you just have to make sure that you find something that is going to set you apart. Right. And fine tune those skills.
Yeah, that's true. Also, Vidya, this is something I wanted to ask you, deep diving into a bit of product management. So generally, there are 2 types of goals which you set for your product, short-term and long-term goals. So firstly, what type of strategies do you generally use to ensure that you're investing in the right area so that your future growth is aligned? Which means that you need to have the right short-term goals and the right long-term goals. So how do you approach that?
Well, firstly, you should never work on a product that is not aligned with your org's goals.
Okay.
Be it short term or medium term or long term. Right. So, and what is also true is, if you're a PM at any point in time, you will always have more problems that need to be solved than your capacity to solve them.
Yeah.
Right. It's the art of stack ranking and prioritization is very needed. Right. In product management. So for short-term goals, right, I typically ask 3 questions, and these are the foundation questions. And one is, what is the problem? How big of a problem is this? Or can we quantify the problem? Or who are we solving it for? Right. So be very clear on what is the problem, which user, which cohort of users is impacting. Right. And the next one is, why should we solve this now? Right. It has to tie to either unblocking a launch, or it has to tie to unlocking a new revenue segment, or it has to tie to, increasing some top line metric goal for the org. It has to tie to something. And the most important thing a lot of people oversee is, why are we best positioned to solve it? Every problem that comes your way doesn't have to be your problem.
Yeah.
It might be a valid problem, but it doesn't have to be your problem. Right. So when I'm evaluating a problem for my team, I really try to understand, are we best positioned to solve it? Right? Can we, instead of us executing, aka taking engineering resources and putting on the problem, can we just consult and have some other team do it?
Yeah.
Do we uniquely position some skills that make this problem only solvable by our team versus some other team, right? In some federated model. Right. So these, I think, help understand short-term goals. And the other thing is, I can speak about this for 2 hours. But there's also a process of making sure that you are able to communicate your team's goals and team's short-term priorities. Take any cadence, take it monthly or quarterly or half yearly or whatever cadence works for your company.
Mm-hmm.
You have to ensure, as a PM, you have to ensure that this stack rank, first of all, there should be a stack rank.
Yeah.
And everything cannot be a P0.
Yeah.
Okay? I've seen roadmaps where everything is a P0, 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 P1. I'm like, this is not stack ranking. This is
linear.
Right? So you have to have a P0 or a P1 or a P1 or a P2, whatever, pick your favorite number,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you have to ensure that your key stakeholders at any point in time are aware of your stack rank and the rationale behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And that onus falls on a product manager.
Okay.
Right? So if you are picking, let's say for April, right? So for Q3 or
Mm-hmm.
Q2, right? These are the projects. You have to make sure that you answer the questions that we just discussed. And more importantly, you share it with the right set of stakeholders and, partners that this is my prioritized set of projects. And this is the impact each of this is going to drive.
Yeah.
And the impact has to tie into your half-yearly planning, which in turn ties into your org goal. So everything needs to have a chaining.
Mm-hmm.
At any point, if the chaining is broken, then you're astray at that point in time.
Yeah.
Right? So these are the short-term things. And you mentioned one thing about long-term, right? For long-term, these are often big bets, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like long-term goals are not, if you can accomplish that in 6 months, that's not a long-term goal.
Yeah.
Right? These are big bets that will require multiple years, multiple halves of investment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for this, I think, you at a point in time when your product has met product market fit, if you're working on a 0 to 1, and it is on an axle, you start seeing that nice hockey stick, right? That would be a good time to do a 2-year planning sprint, where you take a step back from your execution mindset and you pause to think about, okay, who are our users? Like, what did we learn from XX months or XX years of putting this product out there, right? What are the immediate problems that we should be addressing? How does the market look like? What is the competitive landscape? What are our unique values, right? How will we execute this? And what are the themes?
Yeah.
Right. So being really able to take a step back from the executionary mindset and coming up with a strategy on how you see this product evolve in the next 18 to 24 months, and translate that into roadmaps for whatever cadence works for you, quarterly, half yearly, whatever.
Yeah.
Right. Your short-term goals should contribute and accrue to your long-term goals.
Long-term goals. True.
Right. And the beauty of all of this is, like, saying this is very easy. Doing this is hard. And doing this incrementally, over and over is harder. Right. And also coming up with a strategy is relatively easy. Execution is hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is the beauty of product management. Right. Let's say even if you manage to come up with an amazing strategy, right, executing that and making sure that you are able to take your product, right, to where you imagined it would be is hard.
It's hard. Yeah.
And that's where I think that's why a good product manager needs to have good strategic skills as well as good execution skills.
Exactly.
There's a lot more emphasis on strategy than execution. And execution is where a lot of people fail.
Yeah.
Because when you're executing, you have so many things that's just out of your control.
Yeah.
Right? The market could change. Your company could pivot to doing something else. Right? Or you might just have a whole bunch of teams that you were relying on, their priorities shifted. Right? Or you might have some other randomization.
Yeah.
Right? You have to make sure that you take all of this into consideration and then make sense of your product strategy given all these changes.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, a good product strategy will always it'll feel objective. You should be able to quantify most things. Right? And it will have a clear and unique point of view. And more importantly, it will be executable. You should be able to translate every single, point in your product strategy into a project, into a plan. Right. And I think the beauty is, the best thing that I've, learned is once you go through the process of putting together like an 18-month or 2-year strategy, at the end of the day, much of it will feel obvious.
Yeah.
And that's when you know that you're onto something here. right?
No,
Because
that's
you
true.
take most of the products now, and after you've done this, you'll be like, why did they do this already? This feels so obvious,
Ah,
Yeah.
right? And I think that is the aha moment that you should strive for.
No, perfect. Well, thank you so much, Vidya, for breaking it down to such a granular level that it's
Sure.
very important for people to understand that strategizing is one aspect of product management, but the execution is also a crucial one.
Yeah.
So, from this, now let's move on to the next segment of our podcast, the product paradox. So, in
Yes.
this segment, we'll put you this or that questions. There
Okay.
might not be a right answer to it, but we just want to understand if Vidya will be in a situation, then what is she gonna do?
Okay.
So, our first question for you is, as a product manager, do you believe that the product should have a responsibility to prioritize user mental health and well-being over engagement and growth?
You're talking to a person who works in well-being and safety. So I'll tell you this, right? It's never an or, right? These are so intertwined together. Now let's take safety as an example and break it down, right? Giving your users the ability to feel safe, right, and take necessary actions is so important. And that's a critical aspect of users' well-being, right? Now, let's say a team only focuses on growth, right, or revenue versus safety. Now, obviously, in the shorter term, you may exceed your growth goals, you may exceed your revenue goals, right? But over a period of time, your retention will take a hit.
Yeah.
The people will leave you. If you don't let your users feel safe, if they don't feel safe, if they don't feel like they have control over their experience, right, they're going to leave.
Yeah.
So it is actually beneficial to you as a product manager to make sure that, safety or mental health or well-being is baked in as one of the foundational principles of your product strategy. It's going to serve you well. You might take 2 more months or 4 more months. It might take you longer to get there because you're also investing in a whole bunch of other features,
Yeah.
right? But it's going to help you, in the longer term, right?
Yeah.
And many companies, I don't think they realize this soon, right? They're in the hyper growth state and they just focus on, just engagement features, adoption features. But what ends up happening is, if they are not able to prioritize a user's overall well-being product, then they end up leaving. And trust has to be earned, and it's a very fragile currency. Right? Like when I lose trust on a product, if I feel at any point in time that I feel unsafe, I'm not going to come back to you, and I'm definitely not going to tell my network to come back. Come into the product. Right?
That's right.
So for me, it's never an or.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, Vidya, you very rightly mentioned that it's very important for a product manager to focus on sustainable growth rather than focusing on short-term growth and, not focusing on the long-term one. So the next question, Vidya, is should product managers be held personally and they should be accountable for the success or failure of the products, or should this be seen as a collective responsibility of the whole team?
You're not going to like my answer. It depends. Right? Because here's the thing, right? Let's analyze, right? Like typically, let's say a product is failed, right? First of all failures are not bad.
Yeah.
Right? So I've worked on products that failed. You learn and you pivot. Right? But I think what I'd like to analyze when something failed is what was the point of failure here? Did the product fail because the PM focused on the wrong problem or the wrong user segment? Or the product failed because it was not executed properly? Say the quality was low, the page load time was low, the product was not reliable, right? Or they did not take into consideration, safety and integrity, and people have bad experience. So you really have to get and dissect why did the product fail, right? And that's where you can identify what were the points of failure and trace it back to why that who do you think is responsible here, right? Mostly if it is strategy or overall execution, you can probably point it to the PM, right? Because that's a core part of their job, right? It's more around quality, right, or getting it on time to market,
Mm-hmm.
Actually, the PM came up with a phenomenal, roadmap and said, yeah, in 3 months we should do this and we should launch. But the engineers took 6 months to do it, and the time to market was bad.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I think, but I don't think you can at the forefront say, oh, this product failed, PM, you're out. It's very hard, honestly. And these things happen, teams don't work in silos.
Yeah.
Right? So it's also, I think what I found helpful, honestly, in situations, whether I had a successful product launch or a product that, eventually crashed and burned, was doing postmortem and retros.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? This is incredibly helpful, and people don't do it often, right? Like after each major launch, right? Like do a sort of a quick, postmortem as part of your, victory lap celebration or whatever, right? Because it'll help you double down on the things, you should start doing, continue doing, and stop doing. We do this, we use this framework quite a bit at Meta.
Mm-hmm.
What are the things you should start doing? What are the things you should continue doing? What are the things you should stop doing? That really helps you understand, okay, how do we improve collectively as a team?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Vidya, for sharing those answers. As we are approaching towards the end of the podcast, we would love to hear some of the resources which you regularly follow to keep yourself updated in the product management space and also in the technology space in general.
I love the pivot. I'm a huge fan of Professor Scott Galloway and Kara Fisher. So I hear their pivot podcast, the Prof G podcast. I have signed up to his newsletter. And I also sign up to a whole bunch of newsletters, I would say, honestly. I find that to be better than, because it's more targeted, it lands in my inbox than me going into the ether and trying to hope that the algorithms work their magic and show me the right piece of content. And it's also more scoped. Because it's a newsletter, I know like the 5 things I want to read, and I'm not like, endlessly scrolling.
Yeah.
So I really love the predictions that, Kara Fisher and Scott Galloway discuss in their Pivot podcast. And I'm often surprised at how he thinks, right? So that's a good one. I also follow a whole bunch of, PM newsletters. There's a lot, honestly, right? But Perspectives is a good one. Deb writes it. Hot Parts of Group is a good one. Ami writes it. Shreyas tweets.
Yeah.
But again, Twitter with tweets are obviously it's fascinating to see how he thinks.
Yeah.
Right. But what I found to be more useful is, not just consuming a tweet and you're like, okay, I got it, but really like paying attention to understanding some of the frameworks that he comes up with and almost like reverse engineering those.
Yeah.
That's what I like doing the most, I would say. Right. But otherwise, there are a whole bunch of, folks, especially if you're an aspiring product manager, there's a whole bunch of product managers whom I found, to be pretty eloquently putting things out on LinkedIn. I use LinkedIn pretty extensively, I would say. But I'm happy to kind of, hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm happy to kind of, point you to their profiles and stuff if you're interested. But I've found that there's interesting discussions that stem from the posts.
Yeah.
Right. There's also many people who put out a lot of frameworks and stuff. I'm usually not big on frameworks. That's just my personal style of working. But if you are somebody who's getting into product management, like just looking at these frameworks and trying to understand, okay, how might I use this at work? Those kind of exercise might just be helpful for you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Vidya, for sharing all these wonderful resources and insights. I'm sure that all our listeners will, benefit out of all these wonderful insights. Now, before we actually end the podcast, one final question to you. What are some qualities which you see in early stage product managers whom you see being successful in their PM careers? Can you list those qualities and any additional tips you would like to share with our audience?
Yeah, that's a good one. Okay. And you're making this the last question, buddy. I would say inquisitiveness.
Okay.
Like genuinely being inquisitive, right? Not just, stopping at what you think is a scope, but having that itch to go above and beyond.
Yeah.
That quality will definitely serve you well, especially if you're new and just starting out. Right? Because relatively the number of things that you have to do when you're starting out is much smaller than it's only going to grow up.
Yeah.
It's is only going to grow, as your career grows, right? So having that inquisitiveness is, good. And secondly, taking the initiative. Nobody is going to give you opportunity at any point in time. You have to take the first step. Be it whatever is the goal that you're striving towards. Nobody is going to come and hand you anything, right? Luck might favor you and it might come towards you, but even then you have to take the first step. And there's something that I learned very early on in my career, that I have to take the first step, or else I'm a nobody.
Yeah.
Right. So being inquisitive, taking initiative, and third, I would say, is being able to communicate. Right. Even if you're, let's say, seeking a mentor, like I've had so many people who literally message me saying, I'm looking for a mentor. Can you be my mentor? That's it. Like that literally is the message. And I'm like, what? I don't even know who you are. Why would you want to speak to me? And why would you expect me to invest time on you when I don't know the first thing about you?
Yeah.
But what I've noticed sets some people apart and makes them more memorable is how they communicate. Right? How do they build the relationship in the first place? And more importantly, how do they nurture the relationship?
Yeah.
And how do they position themselves? Right? And I have a few mentees where there are times when I did not have bandwidth to take them on as mentees, but I really was enthralled by how they communicate and their inquisitiveness to learn more. So I was like, okay, I want to help you grow. I want to see you succeed.
Yeah.
Right? So I will help you grow. Like I might not be able to speak to you every 4 weeks, but let's make it 6 weeks.
Yeah.
But I still want to, be involved in your life because I want to help you succeed. The difference over there versus the other person who just sent me, can you be my mentor, was how they communicated, how they positioned themselves. So 3 points. I love bullets. So be inquisitive, take initiative, and communicate it well.
Perfect. That's very true, that it's equally important to have a mentor in your life, but as a mentee, you need to show the interest and why you want to be the mentee for the right mentor. So it's a both way transaction, I would say, that you need to be.
Totally. And it's cliche, but mentorship is like dating. Okay, like it is a relationship. Some might not work out, and some might be awesome that you would. I have a mentor. I have a person who's been my mentor for 10 years now.
Wow.
Right, 10 years. I met her, at the Grace Hopper conference, the very first time I attended, which was also the first year that I started working at Microsoft. She and I met there, and it's been 10 years, and she's still the first person whom I call if I, want to share anything happy or if I want to vent out. Right. But it takes a lot of nurturing. Right. And a lot of people start, but they don't follow through.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of quality relationships, Rahul and Utkarsh, it's not about the quantity at all. People are so constrained for time. It is not about the quantity. You don't need 10 mentors. You just need 1 or 2 who's able to give you the time.
Yeah.
Right. So I would definitely say focus on the quality, focus on how we should do a follow-up on just mentorship versus sponsorship.
Yeah.
Loaded topic, but TLDR is sending a LinkedIn connection is not networking. Right? You have to have that personal rapport with that person. Like good mentorship is like any other relationship. It's going to require time. It's going to require patience. It's going to require effort from both sides.
Yeah.
Right? But when you put in the time, energy, and effort, the benefits that you reap out is going to be so much more. This will be the accelerator that you might need for your career.
That's very true. Well, we cannot thank you enough, Vidya, for your time and giving us so many amazing insights to ponder upon and think over those points. So this officially brings us to the end of today's podcast. Hope all our listeners have enjoyed the episode and our discussion has helped learn something new. Stay tuned for more such exciting episodes. Thank you so much for tuning into Product Unfiltered.
Thank you so much for having me. I think you guys are doing a phenomenal job. You're still at school, but you're doing all of these side hustles. I wish you the best. And if any of your listeners have any questions, feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn. You can find me there, and I'm pretty active there. So,
Sure.
bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Vidya.